Hello, David Snowpick here from Snowpick Games. This is my second devlog about a little game jam game that I'm making for the Godot Wild Jam number 22 called Monster Revolution. In this video, I just wanted to really quickly show you how the levels are built, because I think that might be useful for you when you're trying to figure out how to build levels using the Godot game engine for your game. Just so as you know, all of the code for this game is public on gitlab.com. I'll put this actual link in the description, but if you want to download this project and check it out on your machine, you totally can. Although probably by the time you watch this, the code will be a little bit different. You can always rewind in time to where this is in Git too if you want. But so here's my test stage. This is not going to be the final stage in the game. We're going to have a completely different stage here. I'm just using this to test out the little different parts of levels that we want to include and test out the gameplay a little bit too. When we actually get to creating the real stage, that's going to take a lot of time, a lot of testing, a lot of design. So getting things kind of organized in a way where it's easy to build that stage, easy to edit it in Godot is actually pretty valuable. So I kind of wanted to walk you through the structure that we have here. Before I really dig into that, I want to say this art, all of this art is not my art. It is from a free asset pack on itch.io. Called the 16x16 Dungeon Tileset 2. It's a really nice tile set. It's got these characters with these little cute, juicy animations. I really love it. The creator is this hex code 0x72 on itch.io. I'll put a link in the description too. I highly recommend checking it out. So anyway, that tile set, which I will open up in Godot. I'll actually open up the Tileset Resource that I built from that tile set. Yeah, I'll zoom in a whole bunch. So you can see for this Tileset resource, I grabbed a bunch of the tiles here. Not all of the tiles. I didn't end up using all of them, and some of them that got made into objects rather than tiles too, which I'll show in a little bit. These tiles have collision shapes on some of them, on the ones where we want the player and NPCs and everything to collide with. But otherwise, it's pretty basic. Just a bunch of individual tiles, some with collision shapes, and then in the actual map, we have the tiles in this sort of like tile map node 2D just for organizational purposes, really. Actually, let's look at the hierarchy here a little bit. So this first node, player start position, my load map function uses that to actually spawn the player character when it loads the map, so that different maps can have different player start positions. We have all of the tile maps under this node 2D node, and there's just 3 of them for sort of 3 layers of tiles. We'll look at that next, right after we're done looking at kind of the hierarchy here. We have some objects that appear in the background. I'll sort of hide and show them so you can see which objects those are. And then this Y sort for objects that need to either move around and hence appear on above or below different things, or like the door here, like kind of by its nature needs to appear above and below different sprites or different objects depending on where they're standing. So I'm just going to hide all the Y sort stuff, hide all the objects, so we can look at this tile set first, the tile maps first. So it's broken into 3 layers: a floor, walls, and tops layer. In Godot, the order that you put things in the node hierarchy controls what gets drawn on top of what. So just by having floor and then walls and then tops, that means that the tops are drawn on top of the floor, which is drawn on top of which drawn on top of the walls, which is drawn on top of the floor. So if we go down to the bottom layer, this is just all the floor tiles, and then we add enable the walls layer, and you see this gets most of the walls, and then the tops puts kind of these top pieces on the walls. The reason that there's a separate walls and tops layer is because the tops, not only is it later in the node hierarchy, but it also has a z-index of 1. So the way that the draw order actually goes is everything with the same z-index is drawn in the order that it appears in the node hierarchy. Everything with z-index 0 is drawn in that order, and then it goes to everything with z-index 1 is done in that order. So everything in this scene is z-index 0 except for this tops tile map, which is set to 1, which means this tops tile map will always appear on top of everything, even things that come later in the node hierarchy. I hope that makes sense. I feel like my explanation was really confusing, but the reason we do that is so that the character can walk behind these tops. Oh, I hid my character. Let me unhide the character and I'll show you in the actual game. So the things in the tops layer, like right here, you can see his feet kind of goes underneath that a little bit. You can see it more with like these pillars. The top part of this pillar goes in the tops layer, and when he walks behind it, he appears behind there. So we have these several layers of tile maps in order to get this look that we want, where we have the floor with the wall stuff drawn on top of it, which we need to do because, like, look in this sort of area, like this appearing here is not just a floor tile but also a wall tile. So we need to have that layer, and then the tops layer for the things that we actually want the characters to walk behind. So moving on from the tile maps, we have these objects, which each of them have their own scene, and their art for them was pulled from that original Tileset image from this free asset pack, but not necessarily as tiles. So let me go look at, what should we start with? For example, the unlock button. Let me go to its individual scene. This is a sprite. Why do you keep getting so big here, Godot? Stay low. Okay. This is a sprite, which is using that same texture, this same texture, but we're just selecting a small chunk of it. You can see over here, we're selecting the area with these buttons, and then we set the H frames to 4 so that we can actually change the frame to change what color and state the button is in, right? And then we have on the actual node, the top level node, we added some script variables. These are export variables in the script that I made that let me change, like, oh, now it's blue instead of red, and we can pick pressed on and off. So that's cool. So the level designer can decide, place this button on the stage, say what color it is, say whether it's pressed by default, and then we added some signals in code to catch when the button is pressed, so then like the stage can react in some way. And then these kind of things, because they're not tiles, they're not placed in the tile map. They're just placed under this objects node 2D, which is just there for organizational purposes, so I can hide it when I want to just work on the tile set or something. And they're kept with in line with the grid of the tile map by just using snap to grid in the Godot editor. So like if I were to add another button here, let's just add floor button. So it'll start out at 0, 0 up here. And if I move it, I have the grid set to snap on 8 pixels and the tile set is 16. So I can easily just drag it into a spot that fits within the tile set. And it kind of keeps with that same sort of tiled feel to the whole thing, even though these objects could actually be placed like anywhere. So yeah, there's a bunch of different things. There are different node types depending on how they're used. Like the buttons are based on area 2Ds because I want to have the character walk on top of them, which causes the button to be pressed. These fountains are actually static bodies because I want them to just be like a piece of solid environment that you can't walk through. This, again, uses the same texture from the tile set, but not as a tile map. It's just a sprite. And we just, again, selected the area of it that is this fountain. And then we actually get 3 frames of animation for the fountain, which then gets played by our little animation player. We have a collision shape. So relatively simple. Some of these were a little bit trickier to like get out of the tile map, like the water fountain. If we go look at that one, I actually had to make 2 sprites, one for the top and then the other for the bottom part with the water. The reason I had to do that is because in the this actual sprite sheet here, Oh, that's the top. I don't want the top. The water part doesn't include the top of the fountain. So I had to do the bottom part with the animation and then have another sprite that just grabs the top and puts it up there. But otherwise, it's super, super simple. It's kind of the same deal as both of those for the switch and the spikes. The way that the logic works is probably the next interesting thing here. Like I was showing with the button, they have signals. So when the button toggled signal is fired when the player steps on this, it triggers some code that's in a script that's attached just to this map. So this is logic just for this map. And that's how all of the buttons and locks stay in sync. That's how they control the door opening and closing. Actually, the door is a little bit interesting. Let's look at the door scene. So this one, I actually used a tile map to grab all of the pieces that make up the door. So like if we show just the tile map part, we have like these sort of awkward outline here, and then we have two sprites, the door open sprite and the door closed sprite, which actually sits on top of the door closed sprite. So when we just click our extra exported variable here for open close on and off, it's just hiding and showing the door close sprite. And we have the collision shape set up so that we have the kind of part of the door that's always solid covered with these two collision shapes, and then one in the middle that gets enabled or disabled depending on whether the door is open or closed. Anyway, so when in this particular stage we have these set. I gotta unhide everything so the stage actually works before I hit play here. We've got these three toggleable things. We have two floor buttons and a switch. Oh, I gotta hide my webcam view so you can see that switch. So there's the red button, the blue button, and then the switch over here. And ooh, that wizard's in a spot that might mean I can't get past him. Let me just quit this and start it over so that I don't have to try and play the game for too long to show you what I want to show you. But so we go over here and we press this blue button, which, of course, fires that signal for the button being pressed, and that causes the door to open, and then this button to change state from pressed to not pressed. And if I can sneak, well, let me go do this one first. I go press here, that retoggles this, recloses that door, opens that back up, and then there's this switch. I won't be able to get past this wizard. My game's too hard. I'm gonna go try and press the switch for you so you can see that. Oh, let me pass, guys, let me pass. What are you doing? Go attack the wizard, leave me alone. And then we can press this switch, which you attack to actually switch, and then it toggles all those buttons. Anyway, the logic for how these buttons depress and open back up and this door opens is just grabbing signals and doing it in test map over here. And yeah, other logic we have on here is we have, a spikes timer. That's what controls, the spikes opening and closing. And yeah, I think that's really all there is to show. I mean, the first couple of days working on this Game Jam project was really just going through the tile set and thinking like, well, which pieces am I going to use? How are the pieces intended to be put together, which is always a little bit tricky to figure out. I got to go back and look at that example image in here. I spent a lot of time looking at this one. Figuring out how those pieces should go together, putting them together, testing them, and in the end, we have kind of like, where'd Godot go? We have kind of like a little toolkit of things that I can tile together, objects I can grab, wire them up with a little script, and hopefully put together an interesting stage. So I hope that was interesting. I hope that was helpful. That's really all that I have to say right now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.